Hi there. It's day 258 of our Through the Bible in a Year. We're going through Daniel. This is an exciting book. Let's go over there. Remember yesterday, in the first three chapters, they already talked about how he became governor and powerful, and it was dreams. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through the furnace, and Jesus was there with them. And they're doing lots of stuff. So let's continue. Okay, 4, 5, and 6 today. Nebuchadnezzar's proclamation, King Nebuchadnezzar, to those of every people, nation, and language who live in all the earth. May your prosperity increase. I am pleased to tell you about the miracles and wonders of the Most High God has done for me. How great are his miracles and how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. Singing a new tune, isn't he? The dream. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. I had a dream, and it frightened me. While in my bed, the images of my vision in my mind alarmed me. So I issued a decree to bring all the wise men of Babylon to me in order that they might make the dream's interpretation known to me. When the diviner, priests, mediums, Chaldeans, and astrologers came in, I told them the dream, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Finally, Daniel, named Belshazzar, after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy God is in him, came before me. I told him the dream. Belshazzar, head of the diviners, because I know that you have the spirit of the holy gods, and that no mystery puzzles you. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I saw and its interpretation. In the visions of my mind, as I lay in my bed, I saw this. There was a tree in the middle of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew large and strong. Its top reached the sky, and it was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, and its fruit was abundant. And on it was food for all. Wild animals found shelter under it. The birds in the air lived in its branches, and every creature was fed from it. As I was lying in my bed, I also saw visions of my mind, an observer, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out loudly, "Cut down the tree and chop off its branches, strip it of its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with the band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share the plants of the earth with the animals. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal for 7 periods of time." The word is by decree of the observers. The matter is a command from the holy ones that is so living until This is so the living will know that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men. He gives it to anyone he wants and sets the lowliest of men over it. This is the dream that I, Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because none of the wise men of my kingdom can make the interpretation known to me, but you can, because you have the spirit of the holy gods. Okay, the dream interpreted. Kind of got an idea where this is going, huh? Then Daniel, whose name is Belshazzar, was stunned for a moment, and his thoughts alarmed him. The king said, "Belshazzar, don't let that dream or its interpretation alarm you." Belshazzar answered, "My lord, may the dream apply to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your enemies. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, whose top reached the sky, and was visible to all the earth, whose leaves were beautiful and its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all, and under the wild animals lived, and its branches and the birds of the air lived. That tree is you, the king, for you have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown and even reaches the sky, for your dominion extends to the ends of the earth." The king saw an observer, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, "Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump with its roots in the ground, and with a band of iron and bronze around it in the tender grass of the field. Let him be drenched with dew from the sky and share food with the wild animals for 7 periods of time. This is the interpretation, your majesty, and this is the sentence of the Most High God that has been passed against my lord the king. You will be driven away from the people that live with the wild animals. You will feed on grass like cattle and be drenched with dew from the sky for 7 periods of time, until you acknowledge that the Most High is ruler over the kingdom of men. He gives it to anyone he wants As for the command to leave the tree stump with its roots, your kingdom will be restored to you as soon as you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, my advice, may my advice seem good to you, my king. Separate yourself from your sins by doing what is right, and from your injustices by showing mercy to the needy. Perhaps there will be an extension of your prosperity. The sentence executed. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace in Babylon. The king exclaimed, "Is this not Babylon the Great that I have built with my vast power to be royal residence and to display my majestic glory?" While the words were still in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven. "King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is declared that the kingdom has departed from you. You will be driven away from people to live with wild animals. You will feed on the grass like cattle for 7 periods of time until you acknowledge that the Most High is rule over the kingdom of men, and he gives it to anyone he wants." At that moment, the sentence against King Nebuchadnezzar was executed. He was driven away from people. He ate grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until his hair grew like eagle's feathers and his nails like birds' claws. Wow. Nebuchadnezzar's praise. By the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, and my sanity returned to me. Then I praised the Most High and honored and glorified him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing. And he does what he wants, what he wants with the army of heaven and the inhabitants of the earth. There is no one who can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At that time my sanity returned to me, and my majesty and splendor returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and my nobles sought me out. I was reestablished over my kingdom, and even more greatness came to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because all his works are true and his ways are just. He is able to humble those who walk in pride. Belshazzar's feast. That was just chapter 4. Wow. King Belshazzar held a great feast for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine in their presence. Under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver vessels that his predecessor Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem, so that the king and his nobles, wives, and concubines could drink from them. So they brought in the gold vessels that had been taken from the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, wives, and concubines drank from them. They drank the wine and praised their gods, and made of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. That didn't last long, did it? The handwriting on the wall. At that moment, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and began writing on the plaster of the king's palace wall next to the lampstand. As the king watched the hand that was writing, his face turned pale, and his thoughts so terrified him that his hip joints shook and his knees knocked together. The king called out to bring in the mediums, Chaldeans, and astrologers. He always calls those guys, doesn't he? He said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads that inscription and gives me the interpretation will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain around his neck and have the third highest position in the kingdom." So all the king's wise men came in, but none could read the inscription or make an interpretation known to him. Then King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face turned pale, and his nobles were bewildered. Because of the outcry of the king and his nobles, the queen came to the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't let your thoughts terrify you, or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the days of your predecessor, he was found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods." This kind of is just the same Nebuchadnezzar after he went crazy. Your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the diviners, mediums, Chaldeans, and astrologers, your own predecessor, the king. What am I missing here? Belshazzar's feast, Nebuchadnezzar's praise, sentence executed. See, it doesn't. It's talking like it's a different king now. I'm kind of confused. Yeah, writing on the wall. And where were we? More trade. Your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the divine opinion, Chaldeans, and astrologers. Your own predecessor, the king, did this because Daniel, the one the king named Belshazzar, was found to have extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and perception, and the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems. Therefore summon Daniel, and he will give the interpretation. Daniel before the king. Then Daniel was brought before the king. The king said to him, Are you Daniel of the Judean exiles that my predecessor, the king, brought from Judah? I have heard you have the spirit of the gods in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and extraordinary wisdom. Now the wise men and mediums were brought before me to read this inscription and make the interpretation known to me, but they could not give its interpretation. However, I have heard about you that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Therefore, if you can read this inscription and give me its interpretation, you will be clothed in purple and have gold chains around your neck and have the third highest position in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered the king, You may keep your gifts and give your rewards to someone else. However, I will read the inscription for the king and make the interpretation known to him. Your Majesty, the Most High God, gave sovereignty, greatness, joy, and majesty to your predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar. Because of the greatness he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages were terrified and fearful of him. He killed anyone he wanted and kept alive anyone he wanted. He exalted anyone he wanted and humbled anyone he wanted. But when his heart was exalted and his spirit became arrogant, he was deposed from his royal throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven away from people. His mind was like animals and lived with wild donkeys, and he was fed grass like cattle, and his body was drenched with dew from the sky until he acknowledged that the Most High God is rule over the kingdom of men and sets anyone he wants over it. But you, his successor, Belshazzar. Okay, so this is Belshazzar. Have not humbled your heart enough, even though you know all this. Instead, you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The vessels from his house were brought to you, and as you and your nobles, wives, and concubines drank wine from him, you praised the gods made of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, or understand. But you have not glorified God, who holds your life breath in his hand and who controls the whole course of your life. Therefore he sent the hand, and this writing was inscribed. The inscription's interpretation. This is the writing that was prescribed. Hey, I don't know if these are words in it. Many tekel parsing. This is the interpretation of their message. Mene means that God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel means that you have been weighed in the balance and found efficient. Perez means that your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave an order, and they clothed Daniel in purples and placed a gold chain around his neck and issued a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler of the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom at the age of 62. That was quite common. The plot against Daniel, chapter 6. Darius decided to appoint 120 satraps over the kingdom stationed throughout the realm, and over them 3 administrators, including Daniel. These satraps would be accountable to them so that the king would not be defrauded. Daniel distinguished himself above the administrators and satraps because he had an extraordinary spirit, so the king planned to set him over the whole realm. The administrative satraps therefore kept trying to find a charge against Daniel regarding the kingdom, but they could find no charge of corruption, for he was trustworthy, and no negligence or corruption was found in him. Then these men said, We will never find any charge against this Daniel unless we find something against him concerning the law of his God. A trap, right? So the administrators and satraps went together to the king and said to him, May King Darius live forever. All the administrators of the kingdom, the prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have agreed that the king should establish an ordinance to enforce an edict that for 30 days anyone who petitions any god or man except you, the king, will be thrown into the lion's den. Therefore, your majesty, establish the edict and sign the document so that, as a law of the Medes and Persians, it is irrevocable and cannot be changed. So King Darius signed the document. Of course he did. Thinking you're all that, right? Daniel in the lion's den. There you go, another famous story. When Daniel learned the document had been signed, he went into his house. The windows of his upper room opened toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed and gave thanks to God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel petitioning and imploring his God. So they approached the king and asked about his edict. Didn't you sign an edict that for 30 days any man who petitions any god except you, the king, will be thrown into the lion's den? The king answered, as a law of the Medes and the Persians, the order stands as irrevocable. Then they replied to the king, Daniel is one of the Judean exiles, has ignored you, the king, and the edict signed, for he prays 3 times a day. As soon as the king heard this, he was very displeased and set his mind on rescuing Daniel and made every effort until sundown to deliver him. Then these men went to the king and said to him, you as king know it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no edict and orders the king establishes can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him in the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, may your God whom you serve continually rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet ring of his nobles, so that nothing in regard to Daniel could be changed. Then the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and he could not sleep. Daniel released. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he reached the den, he cried out in anguish to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God. The king said, has your God whom you serve continually been able to rescue you from the lions? Then Daniel spoke with the king. May the king live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They haven't hurt me, for I was found innocent before him. Also, I have not committed a crime against you, my king. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to take Daniel out of the den. So Daniel was taken out of the den, uninjured, for he trusted his God. The king then gave the command, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the lion's den, they, their children, and their wives. Wow. They had not reached the bottom of the den before the lion overpowered them and crushed all their bones. That'll teach him, huh? Then King Darius wrote to those of every people, nation, and language who live on all the earth, may your prosperity abound. I issue a decree that in my royal dominion people must tremble in the fear of God, the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He rescues it and delivers. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth, for he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius, the reign of Cyrus, and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. There you go. Daniel in the lion's den. And the people that accused him didn't turn out well for them and their families and their children. Wow. Crazy, huh? Okay, what's tomorrow? 7, 8, 9. Division of the 4 beasts. Ancient days and the Son of Man. That's Jesus, right? Okay, we're getting into the parts where I studied these during Revelation. And he's talking. That's going to be... Oof. That's going to be exciting, huh? This is a very exciting book, okay? It talks about future times, about stuff we can look forward to. So, good stuff. That was day 258. Stay tuned. Keep up. Catch on any you may have missed. You want to say you got the whole Bible in a year? So forever you can say, I have been through every book of the Bible. So, good stuff. Till next time, we'll do it again. See you then.